With so many broken picks completely dominating the Rift, it's time for another Counter the Meta edition, and here we tackle all of the most annoying things you can think of and giving you a better time into those matchups. So all of you know that Akali has been buffed, and that was absolutely unnecessary. This champion has been busted beforehand and is now even more annoying to deal with. And the worst thing about all of this is her access to the Resolve First tree. She can reliably go into Resolve First tree and just become unkillable in most instances. But now her bonus movement speed in laning and the additional tankiness from the runes make her so overbearing to face. And in teamfight scenarios she will literally obliterate, even with Resolve First, any AD carry or any squishy champion that gets into her way. And because her numbers, like the damage numbers, are so absolutely high, Riftmaker adds even more damage into it and even more sustain on top, which makes it very difficult for the Akali champion to die unless she severely messes up her Shroud, or her Stasis, or her Shuriken flip. But Gragas as a champion fundamentally counters Akali on every possible level. Like for example, if Akali hits the Shuriken flip on you, if she decides to take the flip, you'll see the dagger above your head start spinning, and then you can immediately body slam into her direction. You will not take the damage and she'll get cancelled and take even more damage. If you're very fast, you can quickly trade into her and then just back off again. This becomes even more daunting for the Akali player as the Gragas gets more and more AP. As you're all very much aware, Gragas deals a lot of damage, and with even more AP, he literally one-taps you on the spot. In addition to this, not only does he have so much damage and a signature move to just completely deny you, he can also knock you out of your Shroud and then completely exposing you to the enemy team. And if that isn't bad enough already, his AoE damage will not only get you killed, but also your teammates. And for the laning part, in laning phase, it doesn't really look that much better for you. You might be okay by taking sustain in the form of second wind and the first resolve, but the Gragas first ability spam will eventually get you killed. And you can't even freeze the lane against him, because as he maxes his first ability and the more AP he gets, he just instantly clears the wave with 1 or 2 fermented casks. And then you just stand there and do nothing, because you literally can't do anything about him. With Fiora being as strong as she is and able to just instantly take care of towers thanks to her first ability now resetting on casting into towers, she's turned into an absolute power pick. Another champion who exactly did the same beforehand is Jax, and Jax is still very strong in the meta, especially against other certain champions, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But Fiora is a champion that absolutely obliterates Jax. In the early stages of the game, both Camille and Jax might be able to win against the Fiora if they're better, like player-wise, but as the game goes on, the matchup grows more dire and dire and dire, and the simple reason for that is Fiora's passive, the true damage. If you play it really well into the later stages of the game, you can instantly kill the Jax. All you have to do is trigger your first vital, pop your ultimate, and then trigger the other 4 vitals. If you have a proto belt, you can even do it so much faster. And the greatest benefit about all of this is the fact that Fiora can do this on the tower. She can just straight up dive you if she's strong enough. But there are a few things you need to know about the new Fiora. Now she really desperately craves the Monomune on her second item. The first item is still most of the time going to be Divine Sunder because it's just such a crazy unbalanced item. This, in combination with your passive, will sustain you through most of the fights and even 1v2s, without much trouble that is even. But when it comes to Jax, like the main thing you have to look out for is his counter-strike. If you time your riposte properly, he can never really counter-strike you because it's more of a game of chicken. And the fact that even if you hit him only with the attack speed slow and the movement speed slow, it's already good enough to deal so much damage to him and just run him down afterwards. He's also never allowed to use his first ability straight into your face because that's his only tool to escape next to his counter-strike. If you have all your spells available, meaning your lunge, your riposte, and your blade works, then he has big trouble because once he's close to you, he cannot really get away anymore unless he wants to invest his flash. Sounds unfair? Yep, it is, and still, the Jax can win if he plays much better than the Fiora, but only in the early game. The next thing is kind of obvious. Obviously, Fiora will do well into Ornn, but also Jax and Camille. But let's take a look at Jax because I see him more often played than Camille and Fiora for whatever reason. But let's quickly talk about the one thing or two things all of these have in common. They have an auto-attack reset, as well as the ability to just go for Divine Sunder because they have low cooldowns. Both Fiora and Camille have true damage, but Jax doesn't have true damage. He has physical and magical damage. But there's one item that lets you deal true damage and you really capitalize from that item. Like, really much. Any guesses what this item could potentially be? It's Riftmaker. Yep, sounds a little bit troll, but it is in fact Riftmaker. Riftmaker provides you with a lot of stats Jax actually uses well because he has both AD and AP scalings, and since he's dealing so much mixed damage, he really benefits from the Omnivamp on top. But what exactly is Ornn doing? Ornn is hyper scaling, he gets more HP, more armor and more magic resist, so he has a lot of these resistances and life. One might think that Blade of the Ruined King isn't too bad of an item against him, but in reality, since he has such high physical resistances, it barely does any damage. And there's one more thing about Blade of the Ruined King. It's physical current HP damage, which means your upfront damage, like early on, is high, but then it gets lower and lower and lower up until the bonus is barely noticeable due to resistances. Next it is, a Blade only provides physical vamp, and Jax still deals a lot of physical and magical damage. So why not just abuse this item as your second item into Ornn to make his life miserable? Another trick you need to use when you play against Ornn is keeping your counter strike. When the Ornn uses his ultimate, you can use your counter strike to stun him so he cannot reactivate his ultimate and deal a lot of extra damage to you. This is also something you can do in a team fight. Just pay good attention to the Ornn and when he's doing his ultimate, because if you stop it from happening, you can really save your team from unwanted accidents. Another of these accidents would be leaving Soraka open. This champion is absolutely overtuned and requires zero skill. I tried to go for the highest win rate to Grandmaster and I possibly achieved it for the European server with over 90% in nearly 40 marks. This champion is absolutely busted and all you have to understand is how to properly pilot her. But there's one champion which she absolutely struggles with. Technically there are also two champions, but one is a support champion and the other one is a jungle champion or maybe an AD carry champion depending on how creative you are. Well, but if you're being honest, he's mostly played in jungle, and it's Twitch. However, let's get back to the support champion, and it's Veigar. Yep, you heard me absolutely correct, it's Veigar. Obviously, or needlessly to say, you can also play Veigar in the mid lane, but in this instance, it's Veigar in the support lane, or just generally Veigar. So how exactly does Veigar deal with the Soraka? As all of you know, Soraka sustains people over time. While she has cooldowns, she cannot really heal anyone. So naturally speaking, how do you deal with this? You one-shot somebody, right? And how can you one-shot somebody? Well, dealing enough damage. And which champion comes to mind that does enough damage in a fraction of a second, instantly, while providing AoE crowd control or zone control? It's your local Yordle Veigar. This champion has so much damage as the game goes on, it's not even fair. And even in the support role, you get to upgrade your support item, the Relic Shield, very important because you can last hit minions with it, even with your spells, to then gain more stacks for free. You can start last hitting completely on your own at like 415 reliably. So as Soraka tries to sustain her front line, you place down your cage and force the enemy to either walk into it or around it, and then you burst them with a combination of your spells. And even if the game state looks a tiny bit dire, you can still scale throughout the late game without a problem, and you can even stall into the late game. Your champion can create the zone and force the enemy off the minions, and you can literally one-tap the minions with your second ability. Just do yourself a favor and skill or max your third ability the second as fast as possible. So do the following. Start with your first ability, then put a point on your second ability, and then a point on your third ability. After this, max your first ability, and then your third ability. Oh, and the longer the game goes, the harder it becomes to lose on Veigar because you have so much damage, you just kill everything. And before I end the video, I have to talk a few seconds about the most obnoxious pick in the game, and it's Twitch jungle. The issue with this champion is many people don't know how to play against him, die to his level 2 gank, which is the most obvious thing ever, and then he gets allowed to freely scale into the later stages of the game. This champion is only strong in the very early stages of the game when he's able to gank you or cheese you due to him being a ranged champion with stealth, and then as he hits 3, 4, and 5 items. But what exactly do you do against a Twitch? You pick champions that immediately jump on top of his head and kill him. The longer you wait, the more likely you are to die. And the biggest issue here is that he engages you from probably outside of your vision and therefore killing you. He just has to hit you 3 times from his stealth with his ultimate available, or 2 times into his second ability, and then he spreads all the Ebola and everything terrible right into your team with his third ability. If at this point he already has Liandry's Torment, he can wait as long as possible to then trigger the poison, to then apply Liandry's again for his full duration. And you can have up to like roughly 8 seconds of Liandry's burn with full items. That is so much extra damage, you have no idea. So please, if I tell you, if you see a Twitch opening up on you, You need to spam all your abilities right into his face and kill him. You won't survive by running away. You actually have to kill him as fast as possible. So I beg of you, please pick hard engaged champions into Twitch. And that's it for today's video. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel and come back for more.